All right, everyone, welcome. Happy Thursday. We made it mostly to the weekend already. Hallelujah. Hope everyone's doing okay. Not a whole lot is happening with me, honestly. Just working, um, just doing stuff. Oh, actually, our sink is plugged in the kitchen, so we're having to deal with that. Hopefully, we'll have a person come and take a look at it tomorrow, which is super annoying, but you know how that goes. Stuff breaks on occasion. How about you guys? What's happening with you? How's your week gone so far? Besides that, that's hasn't been too eventful. Anybody? Yeah, I played a little bit more of Humankind. I'm in a game currently that's it's not going so well. I'm in second. I'm in second place for Humankind, but the leader is 1,000 points ahead of me, so I don't know if I'm gonna be able to catch up with them. But yeah, I chose a map that was fairly flat, and I'm in an area that is high industrial and doesn't have a whole lot else. And yeah, it's been a struggle. It's been a struggle, but I guess we'll see how it goes. That's pretty much it. Well, let's go ahead and get started. Since it's so quiet. Go on to the first thing. I've covered this thing. I've covered this before. This guy has been kind of he's the reason why in my policies my minimum wage is $75,000. Actually, one of my friends told me about this, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. So he sent me a link on it, and we looked at it. And it's like, oh, okay, this is awesome. So figuring out what to do with my minimum wage, and this is really where it's at. This is Dan Price of Gravity Payments, and he made his minimum wage. What he was taking as CEO of the company was, I don't know, $1 million or so per year in salary for himself. And he made the preparations, and he lowered his salary to $70,000, as well as turning everyone else's salary to $70,000. Brunk, all across the company. And he's purchased a few more businesses since then, and he's done the same thing with them. I think the last time I actually I read an article on this. He had one other company that was or branch of Gravity or something like that was at 70, and then he had like one or two more companies that he was in the process of making that change to the minimum wage of $70,000. So it's really interesting. If you haven't followed him on Twitter, do. He's one of my favorites. He's amazing. It's Dan Price, Dan of Seattle or something like that. Amazing guy. He posts anti-capitalist stuff all the time, and it's just like my Twitter account is just a reposting of Ryan Knight and Dan Price. So it's pretty cool. Okay, so CEO on why giving all employees minimum salary of $70,000 still works 6 years later. Our turnover rate was cut in half. All right. Here we go. It was 6 years ago when CEO Dan Price raised the salary of everyone at his Seattle-based credit card processing company Gravity Payments to at least $70,000 a year. Price slashed his own salary by $1 million to be able to give his employees a pay raise. He was hailed a hero by some and met with predictions of bankruptcy from his critics. But that has not happened. Instead, the company is thriving. So you've almost doubled the number of employees? CBS News' Carter Evans asked. Yeah, Price replied. He said his company has tripled and he is still paying his employees $70,000 a year. How much do you make? Asked Evans. I make $70,000 a year, Price replied. Okay, good. I was right on that. To pay his own bills, Price downsized his life, sold a second home he owned, and tapped into his savings. Some financial experts believe Price's decision was a big risk. It does go against what people expect and what we usually see in terms of corporations and companies, said Andrew Haffenbrack, assistant professor of management and organization at the Foster School of Business, University of Washington in Seattle. According to the Economic Policy Institute, average CEO compensation is 320 times more than the salaries of their typical workers. This shows that it isn't the only way for a company to be successful and profitable. Haffenbrack said. Do you pay what you can get away with, or do you pay with what you think is ideal or reasonable or fair? Price said despite the success his company has had with the policy, he wishes other companies would follow suit. I would say that's the failure of this. You know, I feel like I've been shouting from the rooftops like, this works, everybody should do it. And zero big companies are following suit because the system values having the highest return with the lowest risk and the lowest amount of work, Price said. Price thinks Gravity's returns are up in large part because bigger paychecks have led to fiercely loyal employees. Our turnover rate was cut in half, so when you have employees staying twice as long, their knowledge of how to help our customers skyrocketed over time, and that's really what paid for the raise, more so than my pay cut, said Price. The company did take a hit during the COVID-19 pandemic, losing 55% of its business in March 2020. Holy balls. At one point, Price figured Gravity was only 4 months away from failing, but it bounced back after its employees voluntarily took a temporary pay cut. Among the employees who volunteered were new parents and co-workers, Carrie Chen and Alex Franklin. We reduced our salary to $40,000, Chen said. Holy balls. Yeah, I think we took each about somewhere around 60%, Franklin said. Since then, both Chen's and Franklin's salaries are back to normal, and Gravity repaid them their lost wages that they had voluntarily given up. See, that's cool. That is super cool. That they're, paying them back the lost wages and stuff like that. That's what should be done. Chen and Franklin just had a baby named Thomas. They said that Price's policy made it possible for them to begin and afford a family. Right back on track for the American dream. We have a beautiful baby boy, a wonderful home, a beautiful life. All right, just a second. The wife, again, is wifing. Okay, so we're right on track for the American dream. We have a beautiful baby boy, a wonderful home, a beautiful life. We're not just only living, we're able to thrive, Chen said. Baby Thomas is among one of the 60 new additions to the company family over the past 6 years. He also claims the number of employees buying homes has gone up. To repay Price for his sacrifices and for the dreams he has made possible, his employees decided to all chip in and buy him a car. A gesture that meant a lot to Price. Oh, that's neat. My employees have done way more for me than I could ever do for them. So the fact that they wanted to give me such a real amazing gift, it's pretty special. I don't know if I can put it into words, Price said. You could have afforded that with your old salary, Carter said. Yeah, that's true. I'm way happier now than I was before, Price replied. And there you go. Yeah, this piece isn't quite as interesting. It's more of a feel-good piece. I like the previous articles that really kind of talked about the more nitty-gritty of it. How well the people were doing because of the change and stuff like that. But it's still good to know that everything is going well for the company and it's working and all of that. All right, so there's that. Next. Now we'll talk about this. I've talked about this on occasion, not too big. There's like 3 things we need to change, and this is one of them when it comes to Congress and spending, besides getting rid of all of Congress and, starting over. He got $4.6 million in PPP loans forgiven. Oh, okay. Cool. That's cool. It's good. What he's doing is amazing, and like the article said, more companies need to do that, to be given to change their minimum wage to $70,000, much like that's my policies say. So, yeah. All right. Okay, I got to do this. Now, is it him specifically or for his for the company itself? Because for the company, That's probably where most of that came from for the company itself, paying for um, salaries or whatever, COVID-based stuff. Ah, ProPublica. Ooh. Okay, let's take a look. Gravity payments. Okay, here we go. Oh, neat. Okay, 4.6 mil. Oh, it's for payroll. Okay. Interesting. Why? Okay, companies. Blah. Okay, doesn't say anything about. So it's for payroll. So it's interesting how pay cuts were having to be done. Maybe so. Okay, so he said that he lost 55% of their income of their clients. So that's probably, yikes. So yeah, that's probably where it went to. Interesting. I didn't even know this was a thing. This is projects.propublica tracking PPP. Okay, that's cool. ProPublica's got some neat stuff over there. Great articles. Do they have any other apps? Oh, they got data. I need to get out more. Data sets, health, criminal justice. I'm gonna have to take a look at this. This is pretty cool. Okay, yeah, thanks for sharing that. Search any company. All right, cool. So what does religion say? Credibly accused priests. Dollars for professors. My employer's on there. They got 10 million in free money. Okay. And that's a lot of well, it shouldn't have been done that way. It should have been done, of course, through a UBI so that everyone gets a progressive basic income, right? People should have gotten the money straight instead of going through the businesses, because the businesses can misuse those funds for whatever they want to. So, I mean, why give it to the businesses to give it to the employees? Why send the money to the middleman? It should go straight to the people. It's nice that it's out there, but, straight to the people is the better way to do it. Oh, look at this data. Lots of data in here. Let's see, what is... Okay, I'll take a look at this stuff later. Cool. Lots of data. Data good. Sure, it's nice my boss got 10 million. Well, it wasn't necessarily him directly, but it's the business, right? Yeah, it's just a matter of what they did with that money that becomes the question. Hopefully they did good with it, but most likely, businesses being what they are, we can hope so, but probably not. Yeah. It'd be interesting to see if we could figure if this data could tell us what they spent it on as well. Because if they pocketed it or gave it like CEO and manager payouts while slashing jobs or cutting jobs, that would not be a good look. But some businesses have done that. They've taken the PPP stuff and given their CEOs and managers raises. They've done stock buybacks, and then they've cut jobs. And it's horrific. The lives destroyed so they can make all this money. I mean, it's horrific. Hopefully your business has done better than most. We can only hope. All right. So PayGo. This is going to go into PayGo. There's like 3 things that at least that I've identified that need to change. One is the PayGo rule, the bird rule, and the debt ceiling sort of a thing. And this is kind of go into how the PayGo is a problem, and it will explain it as well. We've talked about it a few times, but not that much. This was actually shared by Stephanie Kelton, one of the big MMT people, through Twitter. Okay, here we go. All right, so how the budget rules hobbled the progressive imagination. It's time to repeal pay-as-you-go requirements, a throwback to the austerity economics of Clinton-Obama era. Oh. Of course. Okay, Clinton especially brought in neoliberalism, so PayGo would make sense for them. Okay, all right. This is from the 14th, so this is fairly recent. As Democrats negotiate among themselves to fill in the details of President Biden's $3.5 trillion Build Back America plan via the budget resolution, one little appreciated piece of fiscal conservatism makes their job much harder. It's called pay-as-you-go, or PayGo for short. This is a little bit wonky, but well worth getting your mind around because PayGo is deeply conservative and creates a structural and tactical advantage for Republicans and blue dog Democrats. Basically, the PayGo rules require that any new outlay, any new expenditures must be paid for. That is, it must not increase the projected deficit. In other words, any spending on a bill must be offset by an equal amount of taxation. Right? So if you're going to spend $100 million on a federal contract for something, you have to have $100 million in taxes to offset it. Okay. The current PayGo law dates to 2010. Okay, yep, yes, that's Obama, because 2008 to 12. No, 2008 to 8 to 16. That's right. Right. The era when the Democrats were trying to play the role of fiscal Boy Scouts at a time when deficit reduction was the last thing a deeply depressed economy needed. PayGo's predecessors date to Bill Clinton, who began the Democrats' march to fiscal prudence über alles. It's French, I'm assuming. No, it's German. Not sure what that means. More from Robert Kuttner. In theory, pay-as-you-go rules should restrain Republican moves to cut taxes as well as Democrats' efforts to increase spending. This was the whole logic of the Obama budget deal of 2010 that included PayGo as Clinton's pay-as-you-go agreements before that. But keep your hand on your wallets, folks. It never works out that way. Of course it doesn't. First PayGo laws were under. Oh, do you know what specifically? I believe it because, Republicans are like that. Interesting. I honestly, I would believe that it would have gone under Reagan first instead of Bush because, fuck Reagan and the horrors of supply side economics and stuff like that. I would expect that it went back much farther than that, at least as perhaps as an unwritten rule. And you've got a link for this too. You go, girl. All right, let's see what we got here. Let's look for Reagan first. Nope, nothing but Reagan in here. Wow. Okay, 2003 to 6. Yep. Okay, so PayGo. Okay, here we go. So yeah, look at that. History: 1990 to 2002. In the initial PayGo regimen enacted in the Omnibus Budget Reconciliation Act of 1990. Blah, blah, blah. The rules were in effect from 91 to 2002, enacted in 90. This is when I was in high school. Wow, okay, cool. That's what I thought too, so I Googled it. Okay, all right, cool. Well, thanks for this. That's awesome. All right, so another fucking reason to hate Bush. I'm gonna move this over here so that we can. I'll have to add that to my post when I get to it. All right, so started with fucking Bush. All right. Exhibit A of just how perverse PayGo is in practice is Donald Trump's $2 trillion tax cut of 2017. This was enacted under that year's budget resolution at a time when Republicans had majorities in both houses. So yeah, this is, just like we talk about here, right? It's Republicans are never asked, how are you going to pay for it? It's just Democrats who are asked, how are you going to pay for it? And it's only, how are you going to pay for it when it does something, when it does something good for the people, right? The tax cut increased the deficit by $2 trillion, so Republicans had to find $2 trillion either in spending cuts or in tax increases, right? In theory, yes, but in practice, Republicans just vote to waive the PayGo rules. The fact that they can do this makes it fucking beyond stupid. If Republicans can just go, fuck that. Why don't Democrats do this? well, we know why, right? Because Democrats aren't here to make change; they're here to prevent change, and they are conservatives. Yeah, they're there to play the part, to make you think that they can do stuff. And here's the best part of the story. In 2017, Democrats joined Republicans in voting to waive the PayGo rules to enable Trump's tax cut, lest PayGo trigger mandatory cuts in social spending. See, and the thing is here, right, is that this constraint, of course, is artificial, right? That they've added PayGo and as a congressional rule of how to do business. It's not there for a reason that actually does anything of use. As we know from federal fiscal policy, modern monetary theory, right, that this is actually harmful when you do government spending and you offset it with the amount of taxes. That typically removes money from the people and ends up with a recession and depression. Oh, right. How about just not give the rich people tax cuts? Yeah, that's a huge part of it, right? The fact that they're giving tax cuts to the rich. So PayGo could be a good thing, right? If it always meant that the rich are the ones who got the taxes, right? So that would be okay, and that's the way my policies approach it. But that's not how it works. It always goes towards hurting the people. Yeah, we need to stop giving rich people tax cuts, and we need to massively increase the taxes on them, which is what my policies do, right? I've got a minimum wage and a maximum wage, right? Minimum wage is $75,000, a maximum wage of $675,000 with a marginal tax rate of 100% at the maximum wage. So getting rid of, their massive paydays. Now, obviously, as we've read here, right, most of the rich people, the really rich people, they don't actually really have an income like this. It should work as we need social programs. Yeah, exactly right. Exactly right. We need more social programs. So where do we get it? From the fucking rich. That's exactly right. That's exactly what we should be doing. Yep. Oh no, I lost my train of thought. Okay, well, I lost it. Keep going. So you're good. PayGo, in short, represents the discredited assumptions of the past, restraining the expansive imperatives of the present and the future. J.S. Maches, how you doing? Top 1% already paid 40% of federal income tax revenue. How much more do you expect them to pay? Up 100%? They don't pay 40% of federal income tax? Let's take a look at this, because that's interesting. That was okay. You got one here. Cool. Yes. 100% would be good. Let's see. Especially if you look at ProPublica's article on how very little they pay. Oh God, yeah. They need to be paying. Okay, where? What do you? Okay, so 40% of federal. Okay, so okay here. Okay, for since 2001, the share of federal income taxes paid by the top 1% increased from 33% to a new high of 40%. Okay, so 40% of, okay, yeah, 100%. Let's do it. Yeah, I mean, okay. Here's the issue, right? The level of inequality here is the highest in the developed world. It's 347 to 1, and there is an inherent harm, an inherent biopsychosocial harm caused by inequality. And there, if you go to my policies, right, there's these two books that talk about the inherent harms with inequality, the spirit level and the inner level. So the higher level of inequality you have in a city, state, country, the higher the bad things are and the lower the good things are. It's just the way it is all throughout the world. Yeah, it's these two books here, the spirit level and the inner level. And they even go into the evolutionary psychology of why inequality causes this harm. So the kindest thing we can actually do to rich people is to get rid of their wealth, because it actually causes them to become fucking psychopaths, which they are. Inequality also causes them to die sooner. Rich people in the United States die sooner than they do in the Nordic states. And in addition, part of that is, because of they're sociopaths and psychopaths, right? So in order to save them from that, yeah, we definitely need to make them pay a hell of a lot more. And again, like I say, my policies that the maximum wage should be $675,000. But again, oh yeah, what I was saying is, yeah, so most rich people don't actually have an income. So that's another thing about that. Jay Meshez. Oh, fucking paywall. There's a ProPublica thing that Tax Foundation not rely. Oh, okay. Are they? This is from Krugman. Okay, so are they a right-wing bunch of asshats over there? Is that what this? Yeah. So I've got the ProPublica article. Let me pull this up here. This was from a while ago. It's on Discord if you want to find it there. Go back here. Come here. ProPublica went through and they did an analysis of some leaked IRS documents talking about exactly how much that rich people were actually paying. I gotta go back here a little bit. Here we go. Can I copy? Copy? No, I don't want message link. Copy. Copy. Copy link. There we go. Don't believe anything. Okay. All right. Thank you for that. There you go. So here's that ProPublica article. We read through this whole thing, and it goes through exactly how much the rich actually pay in taxes, and it's really pretty fucking low. Even if they are paying 40%, it's 40% of basically nothing for taxation. All right, good to know. Thank you, Grilly Bear. Appreciate that. As always. Go back over here. Yeah, so rich people, as you was kind of seeing the ProPublica thing, that they don't really have an income. So, taxing away most of their income, at least directly, as an income tax isn't going to do a whole lot. It'll get rid of, like, their effective tax rate is like 3.4%. So that's one way of, it doesn't do a whole lot, but it'll do something. Plus, we have to get into wealth taxes. I have an 8% wealth tax in my policies. So we first start with the wealth tax to tear down their wealth so that they have to redistribute it to the rest of the people. And then once it gets low enough, then we start making sure that their wealth is considered income. And then that gets dealt with through the income tax thing of 100% marginal tax rate at the maximum wage. So yes, fuck them all. Got it? PayGo allows Republicans, whenever they have the votes, to cut taxes as much as they like and to hold social spending hostage, which is what they do. But when the shoe's on the other foot, Republicans never support waivers to protect spending. So PayGo is in principle even-handed, but in practice, it is a one-way ratchet. Which, to an extent, is what Democrats actually like, because then they can just blame everything on Republicans and say, well, we can't do anything. Our hands are tied. And then blame everything on Republicans. Not that, Republicans aren't bad. They are. But hold on. But see like this, right? The PayGo rule, like right now, Democrats could probably get rid of this because they control Congress. And they could also get rid of probably the debt ceiling. They could probably get rid of the Byrd rule. They can get rid of the filibuster. But are they doing it? I wonder why that is. But hold on. Don't Democrats have a majority now? Okay, here we go. Can't they vote to waive PayGo so that not all of Biden's investment program is offset dollar for dollar by tax hikes or spending cuts? In theory, they could. The Democratic caucus includes blue dogs and other corporate Democrats who are stuck in the fiscal and political assumptions of 2010. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. They could, but they don't really want to. Just to make legislating even more difficult, the House and Senate each have their own PayGo rules on top of the statutory PayGo. Okay, that's interesting. Who does and doesn't pay income tax? Okay, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, right. So rich people pay increasing, okay, share of all. Okay, let's make sure I'm reading this. Average tax rate. Yeah, I don't really care about this. I mean, even if people who are poor are paying next to nothing, and even rich people are paying more, that's irrelevant, honestly. Because the level of inequality is still out of this world. Again, inequality is the core problem here. and the fact that, I mean, this should be 0%, and this should be 100%, 100% right here, 100% right here. In this tax, this isn't okay. This is just a gross income. Okay, this isn't the actual tax, the tax level. Okay, yeah. So yeah, put 200% right here, or 100% here, and then 0 here. Anything other than that, and the level of inequality is the core problem. I mean, how much they're taxed is effectively irrelevant. What matters is the level of inequality, because it is the inequality that causes crime, obviously poverty, right? Addiction, suicide, teenage pregnancies, literacy, incarceration rates, all that, and all that sort of stuff, right? So, whatever you want to set your tax rates at, if the inequality level isn't changed, you haven't really changed anything. So this, don't care about. I mean, it's useful to look at, right? Because I talk about this in my policies as well. But ultimately, if the level of inequality doesn't change, then nothing that matters has actually changed. When is this from? 2017. Okay. How did you like AOC's? I covered that yesterday, or on Tuesday. I'm torn on that. That's the very first thing I covered from yesterday. If you want to take a look at it, or from Tuesday, I'm torn because it's nice performance and going there in the middle of all these rich people and doing that. That's I can appreciate that. I can appreciate that. But then, yeah, it was all over Twitter on Tuesday. People were nuts on it. It was insane. But the issue, as you know from this channel, I'm torn on AOC, because anyone who calls Pelosi Mama Bear is if they aren't already part of the problem, they're becoming part of the institutional problem. So sure, it was interesting. Yeah, I think her ticket was free because she is a congressperson, right? Because so I felt it normalizes the idea to them, get them used to it, and that it should be. Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, from the performance that it provides, definitely, I agree. I mean, it's good to be there and in your face and saying "fuck you guys, tax the rich." Sure, I can appreciate that completely. She got her ticket for free, which is fine. Congressperson, whatever. That's all good. The dress was donated. I just read an article on this. The person who designed the dress was technically an immigrant, but she was from Canada, and her family was rich as balls. So that part of the story doesn't really matter at this point. It's another 1%er doing that sort of a thing. But it was neat that she made a dress and that she put tax the rich on there. That was pretty cool. Now, the other issue I had with her doing this isn't so much doing it, but I think people would have less of an issue about it if her being there and that dress had something to do with a protest that was going on outside as well. Now, to be fair, there was a protest going on outside, and I just found out about that, I think yesterday, the day before. No, on Tuesday I found out about that. Right before I started the stream, there was a Black Lives Matter protest going on, and unfortunately, her dress didn't match that, and she wasn't, a part of the protest, nor did her dress have something to do with the protest. Now, obviously, they didn't work together. That's just kind of the way it is, but it was a missed opportunity. Like, originally I was thinking that, the Sunrise Movement should have been working with AOC to have a protest outside of it to do the Green New Deal and that sort of a thing, and tax the rich, sort of a protest as well. So yeah, I'm torn about it. I'm torn about AOC. Like I said, on my blog, I've said in my, about me in politics, I love AOC with all my progressive feels. But I've since removed that because I'm starting to become torn about her and her place. So, yeah, not sure, Girly Bear. Not sure. I'm conflicted. Let's see. Okay, here we go. Yeah, just to make legislating even more difficult, the House and Senate each have their own PayGo rules on top of the statutory PayGo. Okay, this is interesting. I wonder how different the House and Senate's PayGo's rule are for the statutory one. PayGo, in short, represents the discredited assumptions of the past, restraining the expansive imperatives of the present and the future. We should be investing in the human and physical potential of the economy, not obsessing over deficits. Keynes, as often is the case, said it best: anything we can actually do, we can afford. Oh, that's a nice quote. I think I need to write this down and put this to my MMT page. Yeah, and I talk about this on my MMT page. I may have to pull that up. In practice, there is some disguised wiggle room in the budget deal, in the instructions to the committees that are now assembling the several pieces of the reconciliation package. The tax writing committees were told to come up with tax cuts combined with new taxes that were roughly deficit neutral. But the spending committees were not required to produce dollar-for-dollar offsets, so the package as a whole could increase the deficit somewhat. Yeah, and like with Bernie Sanders several months ago, when he was looking at adding the $15 minimum wage to the thingy, right? This is another way to help offset, if they wanted to, increase minimum wage, of course, increases taxes because wages go up, taxes go up. Therefore, that can offset some of the things. And also, they have some places where they have caps on how much, like when they stop taxing someone, like on Social Security, right? Like the first 100,000 or 200,000 is what is taxed, and the rest of it isn't, right? Getting rid of tax caps is another way to help deal with this sort of a thing by increasing the amount of money coming in from taxes. But they don't want to do that. The Fiscally Conservative Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget, oh my God, has warned that instructions could increase the federal deficit by as much as 1.75 trillion. The deficit doesn't fucking matter. It really doesn't. I mean, every year that we've had a budget, for the most part, it has gone up, with the exception of a few. Like Clinton and Obama had a surplus. There have been several presidents who have tried to balance the budget, pay off the deficit or debt or whatever, and it's always ended up basically in recession or depression. Whenever you do that, it always ends bad because you're taking money from the public sector, which ends up having to draw from savings, draw from investments, use credit cards or whatever to help pay off those sort of taxes and removing that money from the public sector. A further problem is the Congressional Budget Office and the politics of budget scoring. The CBO, which views itself as a keeper of the austerity flame, refuses to count benefits of public investments that produce offsets in the form of increased revenues. Why the fuck wouldn't they do that? To some extent, this is a throwback to the days when supply-siders touting massive tax cuts tried to pressure the CBO to use what was then called dynamic scoring to count promised revenue benefits that never materialized. The latest test of supply-side claim of increased revenue was Trump's 2017 tax cuts. None of the promised revenue gains occurred. Okay. Further problem is the Congressional Budget Office and the politics of budgets. Okay. I hate when they do pull quotes and it's already repeated, and it's repeated. I know I bitch about that all the time. But the CBO, like the proverbial cat that sits on the hot stove and never again sits on a cold one, refuses to score the very real economic gains that flow from increased investment in physical infrastructure and human capital. Yeah, and like there's a return on investment, and there's studies for this sort of a thing. Like for education, the return on investment is like 3 to 1 or something like that. Investing in education is huge returns, and of course, investing in housing first as a social policy, making sure people who are homeless are first given housing, and then you deal with everything else. That, kind of the return on investment for that is it's 3 times cheaper. So you're saving 3 times what you would normally spend policing or dealing with the harms of being homeless by actually giving them housing. And that's definitely something that should be taken into account here. Obviously, projected anything is never going to be exactly right, but you can get some sort of an idea of what those returns on investment are going to be, especially if you decide to be at least conservative in how you do that, which I'm sure, obviously, the government, they're going to be doing that, but still. The pity is that the stars have never been better aligned for PayGo reform or repeal. Biden, after the fiscal drag of the Clinton-Obama years, appreciates the need to go big, funny, and not get rolled by not get rolled either by Republicans or by budgetary conservative Democrats. The key congressional committees are also in friendly hands. Usually, the key players on the House and Senate committees on budget are fiscal conservatives. It just happens that the current chairs are John Yarmuth of Kentucky in the House and Bernie Sanders in the Senate. Yarmuth, in an interview, told me that he flatly favors repealing PayGo. Awesome. He's also a big fan of MMT. Awesome. And so is Bernie Sanders, which holds with Keynes that government budget deficits are limited only by the economy's potential and capacity. True statement. I'll pull off my page on this. Again, it's not finished. It's not complete. I spent about 2 weeks putting this together. But here's my page on MMT and how Congress could actually spend if they so chose to. Yarmuth. Oh, thank you so much for the follow, man. I appreciate that. Thank you. I'm glad you found something of value here. Yarmuth, in an interview, told me, okay, I already read that. Yarmuth has made only modest headway in trying to persuade the Congressional Budget Office to at least count the direct benefits of public investments, such as child tax credit in reducing projected outlays for, say, food stamps in Medicaid. Okay. This is kind of... Okay, all right. I get when the government is giving money like this. This is kind of one of the problems with UBI. The people are afraid, and I've heard this over and over again, that, and this is the way that Yang talks about it, that UBI, the way he does it, is basically going to replace all this stuff. Either you get UBI or you get all this other stuff from the government. And that, to an extent, I have a problem with that, but also it's also useful. UBI can replace some of this, definitely. But it shouldn't replace everything. Like, I don't know if that for him includes healthcare, if it includes education, right? Depending on what that, all the other stuff includes, that could be problematic. Universal healthcare, universal education, all that stuff is definitely separate than UBI. UBI, or progressive basic income, as I use it, is more for housing, food, and that sort of a thing. Revisions to PayGo itself are not in order as part of the budget resolution, nor is PayGo reform or repeal likely until we get a more progressive Congress and a larger working Democratic Party. In the meantime, even as Joe Biden tries to meet the moment and govern in the spirit of FDR, that's just bullshit. PayGo functions as the dead hand of the more recent past, one more perverse legacy of the fiscal era of Clinton and Obama. Okay, there you go. There's a little bit of information about PayGo. I updated my policy talking about that. This has sections about how rules. Oh, okay. Okay. Let's see. So, types of PayGo. Okay, so here we go. Okay, all right. So statutory PayGo is a policy written into law. It can be changed only through new legislation. Okay, that requires deficit neutrality overall in the laws, other than annual appropriations enacted by Congress, and imposes automatic spending reductions at the end of the year. Such laws increase the deficit when they get added together. Okay, all right. The House PayGo rule and Senate PayGo rule are current rules of each house that create obstacles known as points of order to the enactment of individual acts of law that violate PayGo principles, though they operate somewhat differently. 16. All right, good. Thank you. 15. Make up your mind. All right, here we go. The PayGo rule adopted by the House at the beginning of the 116th Congress applies during the consideration of legislation and to each measure individually. The rule establishes a point of order against legislation that increases the deficit or reduces the surplus for either the 6-year period, current year budget year, and the following 4 fiscal years, or 11-year period. Oh my God. Are you serious? Current year, blah, blah, blah. The House PAYGO rule applies to all budgetary effects, both on budget and off budget. Finally, the rule specifies that estimates of budgetary effects should come from the budget committee relative to the baseline estimates developed by the CBO. Holy balls. So, over an 11-year period, yeah, it does. It does. I mean, it's over 11 years, so something outside the current administration. Okay, well, I get why they would do that, but that's ridiculous. You're holding Democrats, like a Democratic Congress is beholden to Republican spending, because Republican spending, they don't give a fuck about deficits, right? And then Democrat-controlled Congress have to be limited by Republican spending, which is fucking bullshit. Statutory PAYGO applies only after legislation is enacted, and enforcement is based upon the net budgetary effect of the entire body of enacted legislation that affects the scorecard for a given budget year. So they add up all the budgetary changes. Statutory PAYGO applies only to on-budget effects, meaning that any budgetary effects on Social Security and Postal Service are ignored because those are paid for by bills themselves. Okay, cool. Thank you. Estimates of budgetary effects come from either CBO or Office OMB based on whether certain process was followed. Okay, so 21. Okay, here we go. How does the House PAYGO rule differ from the Senate PAYGO rule? Okay, the Senate has its own PAYGO rule, like the House PAYGO rule. The Senate PAYGO rule promotes deficit neutrality in new legislation. However, there are important differences between the House PAYGO rule and the Senate PAYGO rule. One key difference between the House and Senate PAYGO is that Senate PAYGO only evaluates on-budget effects of legislation. On-budget refers to all federal spending and revenues other than those associated with Social Security and Postal Service. Okay, that makes sense. Those programs are considered off-budget and are excluded for the purpose of Senate PAYGO. In contrast, House PAYGO applies to all federal spending and revenues, which, oh my fucking God, you... Oh. So House PAYGO rule also includes Social Security and Postal Service, which is fucking nuts. The relevant time periods also differ between the two chambers. The Senate PAYGO rule requires that legislation cannot increase the deficit in the current year, budget year, 6-year period, and the 11-year period, including current year. For example, any bill considered in the fiscal year 2020 could not increase the deficit out to 2026, or the 2020-2030 period. In contrast, House PAYGO rule only applies to the 6 and 11-year periods, each including the current year. Finally, the Senate tracks the deficit impacts of mandatory spending and revenue legislation on a PAYGO scorecard. New legislation that increases the deficit viewed individually does not necessarily violate the Senate PAYGO rule if the previously enacted legislation tracked on the PAYGO scorecard reduced the deficit enough to at least offset the new legislation. Wow. Technical and annoying. So the House's does include why it has to be so complicated and burdensome. Well, it has to be this way, so that way people who are reading it won't understand it, and then they can just blame it on something, and then people don't have a clue. And they want it this way so that they can keep giving money to the rich and keeping the rest of us poor. And it's harder for us to understand because of the cuts of education, right? The debt slavery, wage slavery, and all that sort of garbage. 3 flavors of PAYGO. Statutory, House, okay. Okay, how is it enforced? What does it cover? Okay, on budget spending and revenues. House is unified, which includes Social Security and Postal Service, which makes no sense. And this is just on budget, okay. Period. Where do the estimates of budgetary effects come from? Okay, lawyers to protect their job security. Yeah, and that's it. Yeah. I mean, there are, yes, that's definitely part of it. The more complex things are, the more lawyers are required to be in there to help deal with things. I mean, when you're getting to, laws that on a national scale, even a city scale, state scale, it's eventually going to be a thing. But yeah, the increased complexity definitely does help protect their job. Most definitely. And not just the lawyers, right? Just the Congress as well. Like I just said, it helps to obfuscate what's going on. And actually, talking with that, I think most of the degrees in Congress most of the Congress people are lawyers for the most part. Yeah. Okay, what? Okay, what percentage? Most common degree in Congress. There are tons of JDs in Congress. Yeah. Can we get a percentage? Come on, give us a percentage. The only time they can spend like crazy is in an emergency. They went to town giving rich when COVID hit. Yep, now it's not an emergency anymore. So no. Yeah, exactly. Yep. Yeah. So of course the emergencies are when the rich make the most money. Not just in, like we're pointing out here. They waive the rules and deficit spend and give a whole bunch of money to the rich, but also like we talk about here that depressions and recessions and stuff like this, like the housing crash and in COVID and stuff like that, where businesses are failing. The rich people and the corporations are making shitloads of money by buying up, houses that are being foreclosed on, businesses that are shuttering, right? Not just buying them out, but also taking up the business that is lost through those businesses ending. Like we've got BlackRock, I think that's what they're called, right? Who's buying up property like nuts. They're making payday off the eviction crisis and all that sort of stuff. This is the best time to make money for the rich. Not just through Congress, but also through buying businesses and stuff like that. Okay, can we get a percentage? Let's get a percentage. Come on, just give me a percentage. Okay, here we go. 95% have a degree. All right, let's. Okay, not a percentage. Okay, yeah, so it's not cooperating, but yes, most of them have law degrees, wasn't there a quote by one of the founding fathers that there's actually, founding fathers were even considering passing a law saying that lawyers couldn't be in Congress or something like that. If I remember that correctly. Yeah, it's crazy. All right. So there's that. That's about PayGo. Any other comments on that? Oh, and the horrors of. Yeah, so the way, if they didn't have these artificial constraints like the debt ceiling, PayGo, the Bird Rule, the filibuster, and stuff like that, all Congress has to do is pass a law, and then the money is there to spend it. They could right now they could be spending money, Green New Deal, universal health care, universal education, universal pre-K, all that sort of stuff. I mean, the money is there. All they do is pass a law, and magically the money is just there to spend and do all these things. But they don't do that because, the Democrats, the entire job of the Democrats isn't to actually do good things. It's not they're not the ally of the people. They don't want a lot of progress to be made because, the Democrats and the Republicans are both parties of the 1%. They're both conservative. Republicans are far right lunatic fringe. Democrats are center right. They're both 1% parties. And the Democrats are the controlled opposition party, which is why they don't do the things that we talk about here. Like they could repeal the debt ceiling, the filibuster, PayGo, Bird, and all that sort of stuff, but they're not going to. Because then they can't blame the Republicans for everything. See, am I going to read that one? What time is it? Okay, it is 6. All right, let's go ahead and do this. This is another one about Assange. Let's see. Why is Biden prosecuting Assange for telling the truth about Afghanistan? All right. So when is this from? This is from the 10th. This has some pretty interesting information in it. Okay. As we approach the 20th anniversary of 9/11, in the midst of a wrenching reassessment of our endless wars, we cannot ignore that the U.S. government's persecution of those who revealed the brutality of the Afghan war and the lies on which it was founded. The Biden administration is stubbornly pursuing the extradition of Julian Assange, who exposed the corrupt motives and doomed policies behind the war on terror. This unprecedented political prosecution possesses a grave threat to truth-telling and freedom of the press. Commentators across the media have drawn parallels between the U.S. withdrawal from Kabul and the fall of Saigon in 1975. 4 years before the exit from Vietnam, the New York Times, the Washington Post, and 17 other newspapers published the Pentagon Papers, a classified archive showing that U.S. intervention in Vietnam had been wrong from the start and was prolonged for decades through deliberate deception. Yes, of course, because war is the most profitable enterprise. One of us, Daniel Ellsberg, released those files. 50 years after his case was dismissed due to governmental criminal misconduct, the American bombing and occupation of Vietnam is viewed near unanimously as an ill-fated policy whose pursuit was morally wrong. The parallels between that case and the work of Assange and his source, U.S. Army whistleblower Chelsea Manning, are striking. Thanks in large part to their revelations a decade ago, Americans are increasingly seeing our occupation and bombing of Afghanistan in a similar light to our Vietnam policy. When Assange published hundreds of thousands of classified military and diplomatic documents in 2010, the public was given an unprecedented window into the lack of justification and the futility of the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq. The truth was hidden behind a generation of governmental lies. Assange's efforts helped to show the American public what their government was doing in their name. Assange summed up his anti-war ethos at a 2011 rally in London. The goal is justice, the method is transparency, he said. If wars can be started by lies, peace can be started by truth. It's an amazing quote. Manning told the judge in her court-martial, "I want the American public to know that not everyone in Iraq and Afghanistan were targets that needed to be neutralized, but rather people who were struggling to live." Manning and Assange acted on their belief that the public deserved to see the reality of these wars and the horrors of how they were conducted. Yeah, and on 9/11, we covered. That's all I covered that day. I think was 9/11 stuff. And oh God, probably last year we watched the leaked video footage of the U.S. basically murdering some reporters. I think Wall Street Journal. I can't remember which outlet, but dropping a bomb and just murdering a bunch of civilians and some reporters as well. The two of us, Ellsberg and Noam Chomsky, should have gotten pardoned with Snowden and would have been the best way. Yeah, that's exactly right. Yes, he should have pardoned them all. Assange should have been pardoned. Chelsea Manning, there's another one out there that Snowden, yep, just like you said, Snowden, yep, all of them should have been pardoned, and honestly, Assange should be pardoned and be given a Medal of Honor or something like that, especially for the horrors that have been inflicted upon him in his years in exile. True statement. In Ellsberg's words then, the WikiLeaks publications that Assange is being charged for are amongst the most important, truthful revelations of hidden criminal state behavior that have been made public in U.S. history. The American public needed urgently to know what was being done routinely in their name and that there was no way for them to learn it other than by unauthorized disclosure. Yep, and again, I'm a military vet as well. I was in the Navy during Desert Storm. I was on the USS Enterprise. which was responsible for the initial bombing of Iraq. Now, at the time, I wasn't at all politically engaged. I was there for college. But I do carry that with me. And I have this video like a few years ago where I was just really emotional on Veterans Day. And I have a whole video on talking about that. It's in my blog. It's in the Discord as well if you want to find it there. And I have a blog post on that as well. I was a part of that. I was a part of the initial bombing of Iraq. And that's hard for me to keep, to realize that I was a part of that. And that's part of the reason why, I'm so vehement about anti-imperialism in the US and the horrors that we're inflicting globally. I mean, it's horrific. Horrific what we do for fun and corporate profit. When the files were first published with Joe Biden as vice president, the Obama administration impaneled a grand jury to investigate. In 2013, it declined to prosecute due to what it called the New York Times problem, the dilemma of indicting Assange for the very same kind of investigative journalism that mainstream media engages frequently, though not as much as they should. But in May 2019, viewing the press as the enemy of the people, the Trump Justice Department indicted Assange under the much-abused Espionage Act. Yeah, and investigative journalism isn't really done so much anymore. It's mostly just what sells and not so much, here's the dirty of what's going on. And in-depth, people don't want in-depth stuff. They don't have the brain, the education necessary to follow through on it, or even the time, or even the emotions to read about it. I mean, just to, even consider the fact that the United States is the largest terrorist organization in the world, it's people can't really process that, especially with all the propaganda that we have here in this country. Just investigative journalism, it can be very hard for people to process because it is the truth and it is ugly and it is nasty. Knowing how horribly corrupt our country is and how everything is a lot of people just can't handle it and they don't want to hear it. And part of it's, it's not really necessarily all their fault because of the level of inequality in this country. People are just struggling to get by and just they have enough going on in their own lives without adding the horrors of what their country is doing, like this article is saying, doing in their name. No media outlet or journalist has ever been successfully prosecuted under the Espionage Act for publishing truthful information in the public interest, which is protected by the First Amendment. These charges send a message to reporters around the world. Assange is an Australian citizen, not an American, that the U.S. government will decide what can and cannot be published about its misdeeds and even beyond its borders. Yeah, that is true. He is an Australian citizen. Assange warned the public. I was really anti-Snowden when it was first aired. Years later, I did a complete 180 on the topic. I also used to be pro-Patriot Act. Okay, yeah. I feel you, dog. I do. It's interesting as we go through, we learn more about how messed up things are, how corrupt our government is, and all the horrors that we've done. It's just like what the fuck was I thinking? I mean, obviously, we go from normie, not having a clue, to getting much deeper into politics and figuring it out. And it's just like, wow, dude, holy balls, right? Yeah, I wasn't involved in politics during that time. I didn't start until 2005. It was kind of where my 2005, 2006 is where my clock started. But I really didn't get, I didn't get as deep into it until probably 2010 when I started getting into social sexual issues, what got me into it first. 2005 to kind of 2010, then I got into poverty, inequality, minimum wage, and imperialism after that. And so that's kind of when I started studying or educating my stuff on that stuff. There aren't too many things I've flipped on. I just realized I didn't know anything and then learned about it as I went. The things I have flipped on were federal jobs guarantee, UBI, and MMT. Those are the things that I have flipped on. Bernie Sanders and AOC were the two primaries who got me to flip on those, and I talk about that here on occasion. Yeah, as a matter of fact, there was the video that AOC did with Intercept early on talking about the Green New Deal, and that talked about the federal jobs guarantee. And I was like, oh, okay, I get the use in the federal jobs guarantee now, and I added it to my policies. And then MMT, I was virulently against. I was starting to research a blog post to tear it apart. And then, with AOC and Bernie Sanders, Stephanie Kelton supporting it, then that had me simmer down. And then I did some reading on it, and then it's like, oh, okay, this makes sense now. It's just, yeah. Being willing to reconsider that we were wrong is very important. You can't find the truth until you're willing to accept that you were wrong and change your opinion. It's one of the most important things we can do. Assange warned the public that the goal in Afghanistan is to have an endless war, not a successful war. Last month, as troops were beginning to pull out of Afghanistan, video of these comments went viral with more than 3 million views in a week. Assange's warning in 2011 is conventional wisdom in 2021. Yeah, and that's pretty much the goal of all wars. It's not to end. The goal of wars is profit, and if they can keep doing wars, then they can keep making profit for the corporations. Like Iraq was about oil, right, and military contractors, of course. Then Afghanistan is about opium for the CIA, opium for the Sackler family, which created the opioid epidemic, and then of course the rare earth minerals there, and so on. Every single one is about money in one form or another. So why isn't he a free man? In January, a British judge denied the U.S. extradition request on grounds that sending Assange to the U.S. prison system would put him at risk of suicide. Yeah, and then we talked about this. We covered an article on this, and this is fucking offensive. I mean, they're not wrong. Sending him to the U.S. probably would have him commit suicide because of the horrors of our system. I mean, it's really horrific what we do here to prisoners. But what their judgment should have been is that no, freedom of speech. We're done. Next. And he should have gone free. That's what it should have been. In Donald Trump's final days in office, the U.S. government appealed that decision. Of course they did, because Donald Trump is a fuckhead. Biden's Justice Department, which has proclaimed a renewed commitment to press freedom, could end these proceedings at any moment, but now owns the prosecution of Julian Assange by actively pursuing Trump's appeal. All right, and again, this is just, Democrats are just there to provide lip service, performative politics, right? They say this, but they don't actually do it. They're not here to actually do good things. They're there to make you think that they are on your side when they're not. Bunch of fucking hypocrites. Biden stuck to his word and finally ended the war in Afghanistan. Now, to be fair, Trump's the one who arranged the deal. Biden is just allowing it to go through without actually making it work better. Because he could have helped to make sure that adjusted the deal so that the people, in Afghanistan were able to get out in time instead of allowing the people, so many people to die from trying to get out. Like there's the interpreters that helped the U.S. allies. He didn't expedite their immigrant visas and stuff like that. I mean, there's so much he could have done, but he just, again, they're not here to make sure things go well. They're just there to make sure that people think that they're on their side. He just went through with whatever Trump said, and then that was it. All right. So there's that. At the beginning here, I normally don't do such a grab bag of stuff, but this is a lot of interesting stuff here. Now we're going to get into the core. They got 100,000 people out of a country with 38 million, not even a dent. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and honestly, like I say here, and now these are my policies. If you want to take a look at them, I have a lot here. And basically, what I say, if the U.S. government fucks with any country, they should basically automatically accept refugees from that country. And not only that, but we should be paying reparations to to these countries as well for fucking with them. I mean, we've been in Afghanistan for 20 years or some shit like that, and we have destroyed them completely. I mean, we should have basically, yeah, like you're saying, accepting almost every single person from that country that is not Taliban, accepting them as refugees. And there we go. Then all that's left is Afghanistan with just a complete Taliban. So it'll be one giant ass country with, however, a few million people that are just Taliban, and that's it. And watch them flounder. It's sad how fucked things are. So sad how fucked things are. Okay, so now we're gonna get into pretty much climate change for the rest of this. I cover a lot of climate change stuff here. Again, if you want to go to my Discord, I always list the links that I go over, and you can check them down there. And we've got a whole climate change or a whole environment thing in there as well. Okay, climate change. You ready? It's a happy topic. As we went through this on Tuesday, there was a video that we watched that basically said that we are on track for the worst possible case for climate change, the RCP 8.5, which is effectively 4.6 degree change by 2100. So by the end of this century, we are on track for a 4.6 degree increase, which, I didn't think was going to be that bad. I'm doomer here, right? My regulars know I'm very doomer. Like I've said, within 200 to 300 years, almost all life is going to be gone. It's going to be extinct on this planet. Now, with knowing that, well, we're probably sitting at 100 or 200 years. There'll be basically no life left on this planet, and we'll be moving right straight towards Venus, towards a Venus-like environment. And I talk about this right in my policies. Here it is. I even created a graphic on this. Yeah, and the video is here in my policies. Both of them here is the short form, here's the long form, talking about it. So we've got the world we have today of pollution, and we're leading to the violent world of Mad Max. Probably the next, definitely with the next 100 years, and then the next 200 to 300 years, our planet is going to be basically an acidic hellscape. That is where we're going for without radical change. And I mean, that's what my policies here are about in the environment. And basically, we first start by gutting the military by 75%. We use all of that for, climate change and infrastructure and all that sort of stuff. And yeah, that's what needs to be done. As long as if the United States is not the vanguard of climate change, humanity is doomed. We are the richest country, the most powerful country. And if the United States was like, fuck yeah, $10 trillion just for climate change, let's fucking do this, then we're screwed. I think I'm going to have to sell my condo in Nevada in 10 years if water levels keep dropping. Yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly what's going to be happening here. Water scarcity is going to be huge. I don't want to stuck with, that's very good thinking. Very good thinking. And there are ways that, there are the ways that our country can deal with that. I mean, there is de-desertification. I don't have links on that yet. I need to find, we've gone over links on this before, but there's things that we can do to help prevent that. Well, to an extent, but we're not doing any of that because there's no money to be made in actually, solving problems. Yeah, so you probably want to sell your house there and then go towards Canada. I mean, the further north you go, the longer those areas are going to be livable, because the south is going to get drier and drier, and then the southern climate is going to move further north, and like I'll rent until they run out. Much less if that's a good idea. That's very, very future thinking. I'm in Wisconsin, so I'm not quite so bad. But well, that runs right in line with what Blackstone wants. Blackstone wants to have a rental economy. Maybe that's, it's obviously bad for everyone in general, because that's where a lot of intergenerational wealth is granted. But with climate change happening, like we're talking here, if we do have a rental economy, then they're the ones who are going to take all of that loss. So maybe it's a mixed blessing. I don't know about that. Interesting thought, though. Well, good luck on mitigating your risk there, because The horrors are coming, and it's not going to be pretty. And the sad thing is, I have a daughter. If you go to the Hoover Dam, it's shocking how low it's been in Nevada. Yes, that's the way it is all around the world. Water levels are dropping inside the continents because of the temperature going up and stuff like that. Yeah, it's going to be so bad. Like I have a daughter, she's 12, and she's going to be 80 years. Yeah, if she might live to see the turn of the century, and she's going to see the greatest horrors humanity has ever seen. There's going to be wars for water. There's going to be wars for land. There's going to be war for food. I mean, it is going to be a violent hellscape, a dystopian violent hellscape, as countries and people are fighting just to survive. And like I say in my policies, right, if you are not effectively creating brand new cities from the ground up to deal with climate change, because that's what we need. We need brand new infrastructure to deal with climate change. We need to build cities from the ground up for mass transportation, sustainable energy, sustainable food, and so on. And then we need to recycle the old cities. That's what we need to be doing. And we need to have a nationwide assessment of what areas are going to be affected by climate change, and then we need to make sure those areas are able to deal with it, or like I said, build new cities to move these people to. Because like obviously the coastal areas are going to be swamped, so we have to either build buildings and houses that can deal with the rising sea levels, make them float or be on stilts or whatever, which is some of that's being done, or we need to build more cities inland and move everyone inland. That's the sort of things we need to be doing. And of course, we're not doing it because why would they do anything of value? Game over, man. Game over. All right. Yeah, imagine how expensive houses will get if the Southwest people. Oh, yeah. Yeah, and then with BlackRock owning the houses, yeah, prices are going to skyrocket. They're already skyrocketing because of the eviction crisis and all that sort of stuff. Yeah, people are buying houses and flipping them, and they're going to make ridiculous amounts of money. And that's a large reason why we need a minimum wage and a maximum wage. If you have minimum wage and a maximum wage, then that's going to put housing right in the middle of that, and it's not going to be ridiculous like it is now. I mean, we're probably going to have to do rent control too. It's not a part of my policies yet. I haven't really investigated that aspect, but that might be something that we're going to have to do too, especially with climate change going on and house prices skyrocketing. It's just going to get so bad. It's already starting with everything being on fire, and much like we're talking about here, the water levels going down, the fire, everything's on fire, and then housing prices are going up. There's like an article that did I read this? No, I didn't read this. I didn't read this here. Like some of the crops, like in California or some of those states over there, it's been such a lack of water and such high temperatures that their crops have been cut in half. We're gonna have food problems. So many problems. And it's gonna be horrible. All right, so I don't know if I want to read this one. This is gonna be depressing. Lawmakers launch investigation into Marlboro cigarettes. Right? Same thing. Lawmakers launch investigation into climate crisis, disinformation by fossil fuel industry. Oh my God, we already know that they're lying. There's plenty of evidence out there, plenty of studies about that. We already know that. What they need to be launching an investigation into how the fuck are we going to deal with it? We know they're lying. We know they're lying. They've been lying since the 70s, if not the 60s, right? We know that. There's plenty of evidence about that. You don't need a fucking committee. You don't need an investigation. We already know that. Get rid of their subsidies, and you start increasing their taxes. That's what my policies do. Increase their taxes, like up to 20% higher than they already are, and not just the company itself, but the management. Increase the taxes on the upper level management as well. Get rid of their subsidies, increase their taxes. And either they shift to sustainable energy, they have 1 year to create a 5-year plan to shift to sustainable energy, or fuckerheads go to jail. We know they're lying. That's not the issue. We just need to solve the climate problem. So they need an investigation, that's like I said, on the cities, where we need to move people, how we need to change our infrastructure to adjust for climate change. This doesn't need to happen. This is a fucking waste of time. Again, this is part of that performative thing that Democrats are doing, right? They like to say, you know, they do stuff like this that doesn't actually do anything, but makes it look like that they're actually doing things that matter, doing things that are valued. See, we did an investigation. See, fossil fuel industry's lying, right? See, we're on your side. Yeah, we already fucking know that, you idiots. All right, sorry. The House Oversight and Reform Committee announced Thursday it is launching a useless investigation into fossil fuel industry disinformation on the climate crisis. The committee invited the heads of 6 oil companies and major lobbying groups to testify in front of the committee next month, to which they effectively own those members of the committee, which I'm pretty sure. So this will be useless. The announcement comes after reports the fossil fuel industry has participated in campaigns aimed at creating confusion about the cause of the climate crisis or sowing skepticism in science. An undercover video released this summer, which we covered, appeared to show an ExxonMobil lobbyist admitting the company fought climate policy and the science behind it. Okay, we didn't need that to know that. We already know this. House Oversight Chairwoman Carolyn Maloney of New York and the Subcommittee on Environment Chairman Ro Khanna of California sent letters to top executives at ExxonMobil, BP America, Chevron Corporation, Shell Oil Company, the American Petroleum Institute, and the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. Oh, that's interesting. Chamber of Commerce. Lawmakers are planning a high-profile hearing on October 28th to try to get oil company CEOs to admit they spread disinformation about climate change. Khanna told CNN. Why do they need to do this? It just fucking... They can just do just all they have to do is track the fucking money, and then they know what they're doing. They have, I mean, this this information has already been, we already know kind of where they're spending their money, right? We already know that they've been doing this. This is, oh my God. All right. The investigation has been taking place already for 2 months, Khanna said, and ExxonMobil has so far complied with the committee by producing somewhat very concerning documents. Josh Hicks, a spokesperson for BP, told CNN the company's ambition is to reach net zero by 2050 or sooner. See, again, like I've torn apart Biden's ridiculous, totally fucking useless environmental policies. If you're doing it by 2050, you're basically voting for human extinction. If it is not net zero by 2030 or sooner, you're fucking wasting everyone's time. Again, and also with, you know, Biden, right? His policy is 2050. He's not even going to be in office. So it's that useless. 2050 or sooner, and to help the world get there. We're actively advocating for policies such as carbon pricing and regulating methane that will support the energy transition, the Paris Climate Agreement, and a net zero world. Again, Paris Climate Agreement is totally useless. I have an article on that. It is non-binding. It has no teeth. It is, you know, it's again, this is more performative stuff. You sign it and big fucking deal. It doesn't mean anything. Carbon pricing doesn't do anything either. They can just, companies who don't use it can just sell their carbon to offset for bigger companies. It doesn't fucking mean anything. Regulating methane, yep, this is important. This is important, and there's been articles that show that there is methane leaks in this country that are just giant, and we don't even have a fucking clue. So yeah, this is definitely something that needs to be done, but the rest of the stuff is just fucking a waste. If they actually cared, if BP actually cared, they would already be on sustainable energy. Yeah, this is just performance. Shell strongly supports the Paris Agreement and the need for society to transition to a low-carbon future while extending the economic and social benefits of energy access to everyone. Okay, yeah, so it's PR bullshit. In the letters to industry executives, the committee requested the companies and organizations to produce by September 30 related documents going back to 2015, specifically detailing any efforts to undercut climate science and policy. 2015? How about 1960? Hello? Not that they necessarily have documents going back that far, but many probably will. They need to have answers for what climate disinformation is still going on with their companies. Are they giving money to think tanks to try to influence studies? Of course they are. Conan told CNN finally they need to commit to stopping all of that. In a letter to ExxonMobil CEO Darren Woods, lawmakers wrote they're deeply concerned the fossil fuel industry has reaped massive profits for decades while contributing to climate change that is devastating American communities, costing taxpayers billions of dollars, and ravaging the natural world. Then fucking don't do a goddamn investigation, get rid of their fucking tax subsidies, and fucking tax the shit out of them. Do something. Committees don't do jack shit. This is, again, the performance. We're also concerned that to protect those profits, the industry has reportedly led a coordinated effort to spread disinformation to mislead the public and prevent crucial action to address climate change. Of course, they have. Conan told CNN the hearing will align with Congress's planned timetable to pass massive climate and clean energy investments as part of President Joe Biden's budget bill. Yeah, massive. Again, I know you guys are tired of hearing this. If that budget is not 10 trillion or more, and most of that going to climate change, you're just wasting everything. It also comes days before the UN climate conference begins in Glasgow, where world leaders will meet to discuss targets to reduce fossil fuel emissions. He said the purpose of the hearing is not to try to embarrass fossil fuel executives. Okay, well then you're doing it wrong. Okay, so, all right, so here, this is the way it should go down, right? You tell them this, bring them in, then you've already done the research, and then you embarrass the shit out of them while they're there, and then you throw their asses in jail. That I could get behind, because we already have almost all the research done by various different companies, right? You take that, and you embarrass them, hold them accountable, and then throw them in jail. That would be a perfect committee investigation. But to get them to admit disinformation and commit to stopping it in the future. This is bullshit. They can just have oh my God. It will help our climate agenda if the fossil fuel industry and lobbyists know they're under a magnifying glass, kind of said. It's to try to get the climate disinformation to stop so we can have legislation pass the House and Senate to tackle the climate crisis. So just fucking pass the stuff, get rid of the subsidies, and put them in jail. There you go. Next. All right. Didn't Manchin just say, what's the urgency? I don't know. Did he? Fuck that dude. Yeah, the video of the lobbyists, the ExxonMobil lobbyists, said that Manchin they have weekly meetings with the oil companies. Yeah, fuck Manchin. He's a corporate whore. Yeah, there's a lot of the Congress people who are bought and paid for by, the four deadly industries, of course. The fossil fuel industry is one of them. And it's just, it's horrible. I mean, I'll go and share this. Because Jay there may not have seen this. I know my regulars are really tired of fucking seeing this post. What are the other three? So the four deadly industries in my introduction: banking, pharmaceutical, military industrial complex, fossil fuel. Of course, banking is at the top of it because they're the ones who fund all the other industries. Of course, military industrial complex, because war is the most profitable thing for banking and for these guys, right? And the fossil fuel industry, the pharmaceutical industry need the military industrial complex and the banking to rape the world for fun and for profit. I'm at a bank, but I'm just nobody. Excel guy? Yeah, I work for a small county government. So I feel you. The IPC came out with a huge report in August, but I can't find a downloadable version. Oh, sure. Yeah, I have a link to it in here, actually. Go to my policies. Not my policies here. Okay, hold on. Let me share this. This, you've seen this more than once. This is my post talking about the problems with monetary systems. And the IPC report is here. They have an executive thing. The executive like the whole report is like 4,000 pages or some shit like that. I mean, it's fucking huge. And the executive summary, I think, is 60 pages. I don't know. Let's take a look. IPCC, here it is, right here. IPCC. Share that for you. And here's the summary for lawmakers, technical summary, full report. Yeah, the summary is, oh, it's 89 pages. The summary is 89 pages. Technical summary 150. Oh, the full report is 1,800 pages. I thought it was 4,000 pages. Is this the right one? It is. Okay, I was wrong. Okay, let's open it up because I downloaded it and looked at it. Because it says 1,800. Get back here, son of a bitch. Yeah, I just can read stuff better in PDF and I want to print instead of jumping. Yeah. No, I gotcha. Come on. See, look at this load. I swear to God, it's 4,000 pages. Come on, load. Yeah, okay, 3,949 pages. Yeah, almost 4,000 pages. That's the full report. Yeah, so the summary is 89 pages. God, I thought it was only 20. No, that's the Communist Manifesto, which is like 20 pages. Yeah, so there you go. You can find it there. Yep, that's the link. Yep, I threw that in there. It goes to this page. Then you've got all the downloads right here. Yeah, shared it right above. Yep. My pleasure. In college, we had to read the entire Affordable Care Act. What? How many pages was that? I couldn't imagine. I mean, I like technical reading, academic reading, but that's a lot. I mean, 4,000, however many thousands of pages of just legal gobbledygook. I mean, yikes. Like it's been a while since I've worked on this, like 3 years. I was working on a post on daylight savings time, and I have most of it done, actually. I just have like 75%. I don't have the attention to barely read fiction. Okay, yeah. That I can do. And just, I can't read scientific studies. I just start glazing over when I read scientific studies. And daylight saving time stuff has a lot of scientific studies. And oh my God, there's just too much in there. I just couldn't do it. Love academic reading and stuff like that, but I just could not get through it. All right, here we go. Now we've read other. You like reading bills? Oh, cool. I've never actually done that. I've read like 1 or 2 Supreme Court decisions, which isn't the same. But I haven't quite looked at a bill yet. I haven't been. No, it's cool. Good for you, girl. It's everyone has their thing. I should try it sometime. Try and read a bill. See how ridiculous it is. See how those lawyers are getting paid, or actually how the Congress people are. Well, actually, how the lawyers are getting paid. See how the Congress people are getting paid for the corporations to write the bills using their lawyers. Right. So it's the transitive property of lawyers. The lawyer transitive property. There we go. Meat accounts for nearly 60% of all greenhouse gases from food production, study finds. Okay, so if I remember the stat correctly, it's like 40% of the land is for meat, and it barely provides 2% of our nutrition as well, in addition to be 60% of all greenhouse gases as well. So meat, super mega ultra bad. Production of meat worldwide causes twice the pollution of production of plant-based foods. A major new study has found. And again, with farming, we need to get rid of animals for food and shift to vertical farming. Talk about that here all the time. All right. And when is this from? This is from, the 13th. This is fairly recent. The global production of food is responsible for a third of all planet heating gases emitted by human activity. Holy balls. A third of all planet heating gases emitted by human activity, with the use of animals for meat causing twice the pollution of producing plant-based foods, a major new study has found. The entire system of food production, such as use of farming machinery, spraying fertilizer, and transportation of products, causes 17.3 billion metric tons of greenhouse gases a year, according to the research. This enormous release of gases that fuel the climate crisis is more than double the entire emissions of the U.S. and represents 35% of all global emissions. And when we talk about food production, what I talk about in my policies as well, we need to localize our food production and shift to vertical farming for a lot of it as much as we can. Because like they're talking about here, the emissions of transportation of food and stuff like that is a large part of the problem. We can eliminate that by realigning food production to support their local communities, so that they're not transporting it across the world, but they're transporting it just to their, within the county or whatever. Like there's that one image that showed that some food went from like Brazil, grown in Brazil or South America, went to Indonesia for processing, and then it went to Europe to be sold. How much of fucking waste of resources is that? I mean, it's criminal. Okay. So vertical farming and shift to hyper-localizing food production. The emissions are at the higher end of what we expected. It was a little bit of a surprise, said Atul Jain, a climate scientist at the University of Illinois and co-author of the paper published in Nature Food. The study shows the entire cycle of the food production system, and policymakers may want to use the results to think about how to control greenhouse gas emissions. The raising and culling of animals for food is far worse for the climate than growing and processing fruits and vegetables for people to eat, the research found, confirming previous findings on the outsized impact that meat production, particularly beef, has on the environment. Yeah, and this number could be even lower if we shift to regenerative agriculture and organic farming as well. I mean, not that, yeah. That would be another way to lower the impact of fruits and vegetables as compared to meat. The use of cows, pigs, and other animals for food, as well as livestock feed, is responsible for 57% of all food production emissions, the research found, with 29% coming from the cultivation of plant-based foods. The rest comes from other uses of land, such as cotton or rubber. Beef alone accounts for a quarter of the emissions produced by raising and growing food. Grazing animals require a lot of land, which is often cleared through the felling of forests, which is, of course, problematic, as well as vast tracts of additional land to grow their feed. Yep. The paper calculates that the majority of all the world's cropland is used to feed livestock rather than people. Yeah, and that is, again, a huge problem. And because the amount of actual nutrition that that investment supports is really small. Paper calculates that the majority of all the world's livestock also produce large quantities of methane, a powerful greenhouse gas. All of these things combined means that the emissions are very high, said Xiaoming Zhu, another University of Illinois researcher and the lead author of the paper. To produce more meat, you need to feed animals more, which then generates more emissions. You need more biomass to feed animals in order to get the same amount of calories. It isn't very efficient. Exactly, it's super inefficient. The difference in emissions between meat and plant production is stark. To produce 1 kilogram of wheat, 2.5 kilogram of greenhouse gases are emitted. And again, if you shift to regenerative agriculture or organic farming or vertical agriculture, that go down significantly. Need to ramp up that seaweed production. Yes. Yeah. I read that too. Yep. Yeah, that they could use seaweed to feed the cows, which gets rid of the methane as far as what they fart out. Yeah. That would be one way to deal with it, but of course the massive waste of space and stuff like that, it won't solve that, but it'll at least help the methane problem. Yep. A single kilo of beef, meanwhile, creates 70 kilograms of emissions. The researchers said that society should be aware of this significant discrepancy when addressing the climate crisis. 99% reduction in their gases. That's huge. Yoinks. That is huge. Yeah, and I talk about mariculture in my policies too. That's something we need to be working on as well, and that would be one way to deal with it. Of course, if you do mariculture for seaweed, then you have to transport it all the way from the coast all the way over. That's it's a little bit of an offset for that, but yeah, 99% reduction in the methane from cows. That's huge. Huge-mongous. I'm a strict vegetarian. Part of the motivation for the study was to find out my own carbon footprint, but it's not our intention to force people to change their diets, said Jane. A lot of this comes down to personal choice. You can't impose your views on others, but if people are concerned about the climate change, they should seriously consider changing their dietary habits. Yeah, and my wife is from Europe, Belarus specifically, so we eat fairly well. We do a little bit of beef, but not a whole lot, mostly chicken. But I personally would like to go vegetarian or vegan, but I don't like vegetables so much. It's very difficult for me. Years ago, over a decade ago, I did caloric restriction, and where I got most of my nutrition was from a smoothie where I put vegetables in and I blended it up, then I could take it. But I don't like enough healthy vegetables for it to be, for me to be vegetarian or vegan, at least as a normal thing, fortunately. But throw it in a blender, then I can do it. Researchers built a database that provided a consistent emissions profile of 171 crops and 16 animal products, drawing data from more than 200 countries. Wow. They found that South America is the region with the largest share of animal-based food emissions, followed by South and Southeast Asia, and then China. Oh, wow. I figured the United States would be pretty large on there. But South America, largest share of food emissions, followed by, animal-based food emissions, yep, and followed by Southeast Asia and China. Southeast Asia, that I would not have expected. Wow. Food-related emissions have grown rapidly in China and India, yep, as increasing wealth and cultural changes have led more younger people in these countries to adopt meat-based diets. Yeah, so now I kind of talk about this. I don't talk about China directly. Like India, we can consider an emerging market, but I talk about kind of what we should be doing with bypassing the harms of demographic transitions. So yeah, so this is primarily targeting Central and South America, Asia, Africa, India, and those countries, because a lot of them are, India specifically is an emerging market. China kind of is as well, but at least they are trying to concentrate on sustainable energy. But still, these countries that are emerging are trying to go through the same process that the United States did by going through the fossil fuel age to power their industrial revolution and all that sort of thing. But of course, that is causing problems. Now, all these countries, Central South America, Africa, India, Asia, and so on, have all suffered under the global north and their imperialism. So as a part of that, we should be basically throwing them trillions of dollars in reparations for the harms caused to these places, and then do that also in concert with the IMF, like I'm talking about here, in the World Bank, to give them a crap load of money so they can shift to sustainable energy, shift to vertical farming, and so on and so forth, to shift their economies to first world status as quickly as we can, and do it in a sustainable sustainable way as possible. Because if they're going through the fossil fuel age and polluting and doing animals for food, they're contributing to it, but they're just trying to survive. And if we have the money, we have the money. It's not if we do. We have the money, so we need to start throwing them money so that they can bypass the fossil fuel age and get straight to sustainable energy and sustainable societies. And that can drastically help reduce that carbon footprint, much like they're talking about here, that South America and Asia and China are the leading polluters. They have the highest emissions, food-based emissions, animal-based, food-based emissions. Paper's calculations of the climate impact of meat is higher than previous estimates. The UN's Food and Agriculture Organization has said about 14% of all emissions come from meat and dairy production. The climate crisis is also itself a cause of hunger, with a recent study finding that a third of global food production will be at risk by the end of the century if greenhouse gas emissions continue to rise at their current rate. I think this is really low. Again, with us right on track for RCP 8.5, with temperature by the end of the century at 4.6 degrees. This is, where is it? A third of all food production. It's going to be much higher than that with that temperature increase. I mean, everything's on fire and drought and stuff like that. They are very, very much underestimating this. Scientists have consistently stressed that if dangerous global heating is to be avoided, a major rethink of eating habits and farming practices is required. Look at my policies. Meat production has now expanded to the point that there are now approximately 3 chickens for every human on the planet. Okay. Louis Ziska, a plant physiologist at Columbia University who is not involved in the research, said the paper is a damn good study that should be given due attention at the upcoming UN climate talks in Scotland. A fundamental unknown in global agriculture is its impact on greenhouse gas emissions, Ziska said. While previous estimates have been made, this effort represents a gold standard that will serve as an essential reference in years to come. Yes, so animals as food, bad. We know we need to get beyond it. Let's just did. All right, there you go. There's that one. Now we're at 8 minutes left. They're bringing down the Amazon to make room for cows and soybean to feed China. China bought 73% of Brazil's export of soybean last year. Oh, that's interesting. I wasn't aware of that. Yeah, that's kind of messed up. And again, we're getting into, we need to shift agriculture to be hyper-localized, and that's, China needs to hyper-localize their food production, try to be as self-sustainable as possible. I mean, they got plenty of fucking land to do it themselves. I mean, they may not have the infrastructure to do it right away, but they could do it. It makes up about 30% of soybeans that China consumes. Oh, wow. That's a lot. Insane. Huh. Bet you they're paying a pretty good premium for that as well. That's probably another reason why, you know, the corporations ended up burning down a bunch of the Amazon, even though the indigenous lawsuit was won. Yeah, got a lot of people to feed. Yeah, definitely. And again, that's a failure that's a systemic and structural failure of China to not to not feed their people like that. All right. This article, I thought we dealt with this bullshit. The ozone hole over the South Pole is now bigger than Antarctica. I thought we dealt with the ozone issue. Yeah, I just saw that today. I'm like, what the absolute fuck? I thought we dealt with this. I thought I didn't think this was an issue. Now, in addition to everything else, everything being on fire, droughts, refugees, now we've got the ozone to deal with as well. In case you didn't think it could get worse, surprise, it is. The hole in the ozone that forms every year over the South Pole is now larger than Antarctica, scientists from the European Union's Copernicus Atmosphere Monitoring Service said Thursday. The ozone depletes and forms a hole over the Antarctic in the southern hemisphere's spring, which is from August to October. It typically reaches its largest size between mid-September and mid-October, according to Copernicus. After growing considerably in the past week, the hole is now larger than 75% of previous years' ozone holes at the same stage of the season. Since 1979, is now bigger than the continent it looms over. So it sounds like here that they're saying that there's always a hole in the ozone. It gets bigger and smaller. It's just now it is just fucking huge. This year, the ozone hole developed as expected at the start of the season. Vincent Henry Puch, Copernicus director, said in a statement. Now, our forecasts show that this year's hole has evolved into a rather larger than usual one. Last year's hole also began unexceptionally in September, but then turned into one of the longest lasting ozone holes in our data record, according to Copernicus. The ozone layer, which sits between 9 and 22 miles above the Earth, protects the planet from ultraviolet radiation. The hole in the southern hemisphere is typically caused by chemicals such as chlorine and bromine migrating into the stratosphere, creating catalytic reactions during Antarctic winter. The ozone hole is related to the Antarctic polar vortex, a band of swirling cold air that moves around the Earth. When temperatures high up in the stratosphere start to rise in the late spring, ozone depletion slows, the polar vortex weakens and finally breaks down, and by December, the ozone levels usually return to normal. This ends the isolation of air created by the polar vortex that forms during the Antarctic winter, enabling chemicals such as chlorine and bromine to deplete the ozone layer, according to Copernicus and NASA. Ozone levels are usually restored to normal levels by December. Okay, interesting. Copernicus monitors the ozone layer using computer modeling and satellite observations, and although the ozone layer is showing signs of recovery, Copernicus says it would not completely recover until the 2060s or 2070s. Oh, that's just great. Just fucking wonderful. This is because it will take time to see the effects of the phasing out of chlorofluorocarbons, CFCs, which deplete the ozone layer. I thought this was done like in the fucking 80s or some shit like that. No, I don't want fucking cash flow. Oh, I suppose putting the right thing in here helps, right? CFCs. My bad. Oh, 2010. Wow, that late? Okay, so once widely used in the manufacture, blah, 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 its production was banned in 2010, although CFC 11 continues to leak from foam building insulation and appliances manufactured before that year. Ah, wow. Oh no. When were CFCs banned in the US? In the mid-70s, yeah. Okay, in 1978, the United States banned non-essential use of CFCs. Okay, so a bunch of countries are still using them. Actually, that's part of the problem. Huh. This is because it will take time to see the effects. Okay, I just read that. Chemicals were first regulated by the Montreal Protocol, first signed in 1987. Okay, there we go. They are expected to be phased out by 2030. Whoa, according to the Environmental Protection Agency. A study published in the Nature journal last month said the world would be on course for an additional 2.5 degrees Celsius rise in global temperatures and a collapse of the ozone layer if CFCs had not been banned by the protocol. Okay, so this is new. So the Montreal Protocol, signed in 1987, phased out by 2030. That's ridiculous. More corporate bullshit. Well, see, that's what we get for taking so much time to phase this shit out. Son of a bitch. Okay, well, there's some picky up stuff there for today. CFCs in the ozone is still a problem. That's just amazing. Amazing stuff. Well, all right. We've reached our 2-hour mark. Last call for comments. Wow. This is just crazy. Oh. She's got something fancy here. Rocket launches could be affecting our ozone. Ah, because they're burning the environment, which may create ozone. Rocket launchers, blah, blah, blah. While some worried about... Okay, while some may be worried about potential greenhouse gas emissions, that's not the main issue. Instead, it's ozone depletion and potential effects in our upper atmosphere, specifically the stratosphere. Okay, one of the arguments that people have used in the past was to say that we don't really need to pay attention to rockets or to the space industry, or the space industry is small and it's always going to be small. Oh, that's fucking insane. Anyways, yeah. See, the stratosphere. Okay. Okay, that's crazy. The fact that this is all right. Yes, Girly Bird, thank you so much for gifting me with your time. I appreciate it. Have a great rest of your week. I'll be on again on Saturday at 3 p.m. And yeah, thanks for joining me. You go read some law bills, and we'll see you later. Have a great week.
Just me and you, let's make up all the rules. Count to 10 and watch the stars turn blue. Watch the stars.